the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
JJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dr. Doug. Happy to be here.
Good to have you here. I always love for my guests to kind of describe who they are, what their background is, and what was either the aha moment or the gradual change of mindset that brought them to the point that they are today where they're writing books and helping people and so forth. So I'd love for you to share that with the audience.
Okay, how much time do you have?
Well, we got a little bit.
Yeah, I could go soundbite, or I could go tell the story. And
take a few minutes and share the story.
Okay, so who am I? Well, I'm a person I'm a truth seeker, and I believe in healing everything and anything. I believe everything is fixable to like more than most people think. I won't say that you might have to accept certain things that you don't think can be fixed, but there's always a way to get to like the root of what you want out of that. So I really think anything is possible, and miracles are possible. My background goes back to, I've done a little bit of things that might seem disconnected, but they've come connected into the present moment, and I'll tell you why. So I started out as a very emotionally intelligent child who asked very good questions about, why do I feel this way? Why did I react that way? Why did he feel that way? Why does he react that way? Very curious about all kinds of things, especially my own inner workings, but then also about traditional things like churches. Like, why does that church do that and we do this? Why do they, like, I was very curious and interested in understanding why someone did what they did. And that sort of has colored my entire life. And the right brain part of me enjoyed the arts and singing and dancing and acting as a way to fully express myself. Acting became sort of that's fun. Yeah, I want to be able to explore every emotion to its fullest degree, because when in life do we do that? We don't, because it's not socially acceptable for you to scream at the top of your lungs and be angry or mad. You're supposed to, be nice and kind and quiet and respectful and behave. So acting became a way to sort of psychologically, emotionally express and play in the realm of emotions, and also to learn what it must be like to be somebody else. Because if done correctly, if done right, you should not be you on that stage. You are a character who is not you. And looking through someone's eyes, someone else's circumstances, someone else's history, what must that be like to embody a different set of circumstances than you grew up with? And then fast forward, I didn't really think I was terribly smart in a left brain kind of way, because I didn't love math or science in school. They bored me. I didn't understand the point. I didn't come to me super naturally or easily, even though I got, A minuses and B pluses. It didn't fit until I became a personal trainer and I learned biomechanics and science, exercise physiology, biomechanics, even physics, from the position of mechanically and how it works with the body. And when I could see it, the visual part of it, then it made sense. And then I realized that I actually am pretty smart. So I was like, oh, I actually understand this. And so then I had a new sense of confidence about myself in order to go out to the world and teach science. And while those two things may seem separate, they're the different parts. I had a very right brain experience, and now my left brain was opened up, and that felt really fun and exciting. And then from there, I moved to California, started my own business, did a little bit of both. And in the process of being a trainer and working with people, of course, and being curious, being a very good problem solver, I would be introduced to people who had problems that I didn't have answers for yet. And so every new problem then directed me to go learn something new. And and again, emotions are my jam. So they always have been. And when you say that emotion is energy in motion, okay, yeah, I got that. When I heard about Dr. Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief, the first time, I'm like, yeah, your beliefs affect your biology. I don't need to be convinced of anything more than that. You sold me on the cover. So to me, and vibration and frequency and are tangible things to me. They're not invisible. They're very visible, and I can see how it all works. But that's how my brain works differently than other people's brains. So when we got to the exercise piece and people's desire to be healthier or to relieve pain or to whatever they were doing, I had to start to look for other ways to interpret or explain or engage people to care about what's underneath the hood. Because again, as a trainer, I could give you the perfect diet plan for you. I can give you the perfect supplement list for you based on all of your labs and all of your everything you're doing. I give you the perfect biomechanically sound exercise routine to build muscle and to burn fat and to get stronger and increase flexibility. But whether you do it or not has nothing to do with the plan. It has to do with your psychology. It has to do with your inner workings, what motivates you, what scares you, your confidence, your ability to push yourself or to do hard things. So that sort of led me down the path of empowerment strategist. And I was learning law of attraction and all kinds of really fun things that were making my life better and changing my life, but I couldn't share them with my clients. Because I did, of course I did, but they didn't really care because that's not why they signed up for it with me. They didn't sign up to be coached. They signed up to be worked out and to be given exercise diet plans and things like that. So I started my podcast back in 2014. We're coming on 10 years. And that was to just share with the world and see how the world wanted me to show up. What do you want me to? I have all this content and I want to put it somewhere. So here I'm going to put on a podcast. And then clearly through the experience of doing that, the universe spoke, the audience spoke, and I was asked to step into the whole law of attraction, quantum physics, combination of the left-right brain. A lot of people have said to me, I listen to your show because you use the science. You're not just woo-woo, but you link the science to the woo. And I'm like, yeah, because it's all science, all of it. So yeah, and that's kind of how we are here. I'm an empowerment strategist. I coach people on how to be happy, pretty much. And we take any circumstance or situations and more successful, because it happens in your business too. I know you talk a lot about businesses, and that's where businesses need to look under the hood because you're running your show. So guess what? It's your energy, your frequency, your fears that get in the way of growing.
Well, that's so true. And you talk about, you made that change into helping people and so forth, but you've been talking about the brain. And, go into that a little bit, because you have what, 4 characters of the mind, of the brain? Explain a little bit about that. And how do you use that when you're working with people?
I have a lot of tools, and that whole brain living tool that you're talking about is one of many, many, many tools that I have. And that was a book written by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. It was her second book. Her first book was called My Stroke of Insight. She was a neuroanatomist. So she studied the brain because her brother had, I believe it was either schizophrenia. I'm pretty sure it was schizophrenia and maybe bipolar disorder. And so she was fascinated with the brain. So she studied it, and she herself was extremely left-brained, character 1, character 2. And then she had a stroke. And on the way into her stroke, she was like, oh, goody, I get to study the brain from the inside now. And so then coming out of her stroke 8 years later, she wrote a book called Whole Brain Living. And so she talked about, while we understand the left and right brain to be like just 2 sections of the brain, she identified that there are subsections of each section. So there's actually 4, and they can become characters, and they have different wants and needs in the body in terms of what their job is and how they protect us or help us. And so it's her 4 characters that I've used in some of the work that I've done. I recommend the book. I've had her on the show multiple times. But when we look at what they're there to accomplish and how they're there to something like 1, your character 2, which is your left feeling brain, is there really to just keep you safe. But the problem with your character 2 is sometimes people live in their character 2, which I'm going to call victim mentality also. It's not always victim mentality. It's not that cut and dry. But if your character 2 is afraid of anything, which is going to be true because it's going to be afraid of everything that isn't normal, or even the things that are normal it's afraid of, it's going to hold you back in all aspects of your life. Now, that character 2 is never going to go away because they have a job. And most people think it's an all or nothing. Like, I've got to get all those negative voices out of my head in order for me to thrive in either health, relationships, or business or money. And you have to be able to reorganize those thoughts to say, this is a part of you that literally just wants you to survive. It wants you to be safe. It wants you to survive. It's not as advanced as the rest of the parts of your brain are. It's not as connected. In fact, it's disconnected. But that little part of your brain is never going to go away. So make peace with her or him, because it's here to stay. It's how to manage those voices. It's how to have the rest of the parts of the brain come online to talk to that character too. And of course, you make it very personalized by naming your characters and understanding that different parts of you. So if you want something, and goes for any aspect of life, health, relationships, business, money, if you want something different or more than you currently have, then you have to learn something or do something different. Like, you can't just, it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. If you don't learn how to access different parts of your brain or different parts of your personality, or remove some of your core wounds and your blocks, you can want all that you want, more and different. But until you change you from the inside out, you ain't getting it.
All right, so let's talk about the 4 parts of the brain. Can you identify what those are and how they affect our thinking and our lives in general?
I can give you a general overview, but I just really recommend, I have a podcast episode. We've full talked about that. Everybody can get the book, Whole Brain Living. Character. So left brain is character 1 and 2. Right brain is character 3 and 4. Character 1 is the action taker. In terms of, it'd be more the masculine energy. It'd be the linear thinker, the get things done, the action taker, the one who's organizing things, wants to keep things in control, wants to keep things moving. Character 2 is the emotional side of that, because there's a thinking brain and feeling brain. The feeling part, the character 2, is the person that doesn't like it being out of control, doesn't want to thinks it's unsafe when things are out of control. And the left part of your brain keeps us human, in that we feel separate from other people. And it's not actually the truth. It's just how we survive on this planet right now in our lives, by action, because we do have to get things done. We do have to pay the bills so we can stay in our homes. We do have to put gas in the car, or, charge it, whatever kind of car you have. Like, those things have to happen if you want to do anything. If you don't want to do anything, then of course you don't have to do any of that. The right side of the brain, character 3, is your playful, sort of like childlike, just wants experiences, just wants to feel, wants to express in all the things, all the ways. And it's not, and feels very connected to all that is. It's really the higher self part on the right side, because it's the emotions, it's that energetic piece. It's where we live in a state of connection and constant feeling. And character 4 would be more of the thinking right brain, which is like your meditation, your Zen-like, you're connected to all that is, but still functional. The person that trusts and knows that you and I are cut from the same cloth, that this reality we're living is actually not real. It's an illusion. It is part of a story, but it's not the whole story. It's just a fraction of the story. So those different parts of the brain keep you, you have a set way that the brain, you come into this world. Okay, you come into this world, and depending on your astrology, your core wounds, your parents, what they model for you, what you do, like all of that creates a story, creates a reality that you connect to. But it is just a story, and it's not really real. It's your story. There are multiple versions of that story. And so what I love about working with the brain on all of the things, on neuroplasticity, on core wounds, on these characters, is that you can change it. You can change the amount of intuition that you have because your right brain hasn't been activated. You can increase the amount of trust and surrender that you're able to do. You're able to reconnect your brain to your body to help you be more physically active. I've had clients in the past, personal training clients, who, like one person in particular, she was really crooked. She was older and she hired me because she wanted to lose weight. Well, she was really crooked and sort of broken and then a lot of joints and stuff. And she was kind of older. And I said, Lee, we can't make this broken machine, if you will, work harder in order for you to lose weight. We have to sort of fix the machine first. We have to make it so you're not going to keep breaking down. So I did some random, they're not random to me, but someone else would be like, why are you doing that exercise with her? Like I had her on the floor doing leg lifts and stuff. Anyway, I did a bunch of things for a couple of sessions and all of a sudden she was walking better. And she said to me, did I build muscle in 3 sessions? I said, no, we turned it on. Now that it's on, it's available to help you move. And that's what the brain does. The brain can turn on muscles. The brain can turn on neural pathways that you have not opened up before. And we have all this possibility, but most of us get stuck in our own ways because we only have done things one way. And so the brain's just this wonderful place that's connected to the body to help open up emotions, new ways of thinking, new ways of interpreting, new ways of feeling. It's all there for us if we just want to sort of learn a little bit.
Well, and let's talk about neuroplasticity, because I think a lot of people I think there's a common belief out there that I cannot change. I am who I am, and I'm never going to change. And yet, science has shown through neuroplasticity that changes can actually be made and become permanent. Can you share a little bit of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as of the recording of the show, which is 2 months, 3 months, 2 months out from when it's actually going to be published. So mark this. This is June 25th. I released a show today called "Why Neuroplasticity is the Goal." So, because it is, yes, you are changeable, and I can show you from your body to your brain to everything about you. Again, go back to the acting. This is where it all connects. I learned more about science, religion, and what else did I learn? So I learned and history, science, religion, and history in an acting class when I did Our Town in 1992 at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts in the film and TV class, because my professor at the time, he taught Stella Adler technique, and Stella Adler technique in the acting world is where you live a day in the life of your character. Well, guess what? The character's not me. I've never experienced any of the things that person had experienced. So when I embody these new circumstances, because we all have a story. We all have wounds. I'm from this town. I grew up in this kind of climate. This is the kind of music we listen to. This is our spiritual beliefs. This is our political beliefs. This is what my parents did. Like, that's your framework for the way that you react and act in the world. And if you change the entire framework, you get to be a new expression of who you are. So there is no set in stone. There might be set in stones. The only set in stone I would say would be astrology. Because that to me that's your blueprint, is your astrology. I'm a Pisces with many, many Sages. Those Sages have me as energized as I am with no caffeine all of the time. Not from a nervous I'm on right now because we're talking and I'm paying attention to my words and I'm wanting to communicate something to you, but I'm not like, I don't have that kind of nervous energy, or I don't have nervous energy. I'm just I'm focused, and I'm powerful when I want to be. I elevate that. So I think besides astrology that everything can be changed, and you can even change the expression of that. Someone with a lot of fire like me needs to ground in order to ground that. Someone with a lot of, air also needs whatever. Everyone can figure out how to balance the elements that they are made up of, and therefore then to get a desired change in how you respond to life. So I think everything is changeable.
Well, and you're talking about astrology. I've never really gotten into that on my show. Okay. And it fascinates me. How do you feel like astrology really affects our lives and who we are?
In every shape you can imagine, in every way. Astrology was what answered the question for me when I was in my teens. Why don't people react the same way I do? Like, I would look at a scene, and I'd be horrified, let's say, or I'd be like, oh my God, that's terrible. And I'd look around and see that no one else was reacting the same way I was. I'm like, what? Are you people stupid? Like, it made me nicer because I would just assume and judge people like that they were heartless or they're whatever they were, depending on the situation, because I was like, okay, I'm seeing this and I'm interpreting it in a specific way, and I'm having a feeling because of that. Why is everybody else not having the same interpretation and therefore feeling? And astrology really taught me how people see the world in different ways and for different reasons, because it's based on elements: fire, water, air, and earth. And each element has a connection to how we sort of express. So water is about feelings, and everybody's made up. Everyone has a recipe. It's not the horoscopes. You're not, what is your sun sign, Dr. Doug?
Oh, yeah, I was going to tell you a story about that, so we'll laugh about that in a minute. So
okay.
I'll tell you the story now. So I'm an Aries. So when I first started my dental practice in Palm Springs years ago, my receptionist was actually really into astrology, and she said, "Hey, let me do your astrological chart." And I'm going, "Okay." So I gave her my birthday, where I was born, the time, and so forth. I came back the next day, and she looked at me. She says, "Oh my goodness." I'm going, "What do you mean?" And I don't know. It wasn't totally true, but she says, "You have so many signs in Aries. It's just like you're Aries, 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 Aries." And there's some others since I've done it again. But anyway, that was my story. So I'm Aries and a lot of Aries.
Okay, let me tell you about Aries. So Aries is the first of the signs. And that has a lot, there's no good or bad, but let's just go positive and negative, or possibility or potential, issues, so to speak. Okay. So
Right.
because you're an Aries, and I teach astrology in a straight line, not in a circle. So what that means is, imagine you're like, there's a snowball in astrology. You are the infant of the signs. Okay. So that is not a judgment. You're the first, you're a baby. What that means is you're innocent. It could mean that you're innocent. Doesn't always mean you're innocent. It could mean that you have an innocent way of looking at life, that maybe it's your first time on the planet. And so Aries by default likes to compartmentalize into good and bad, right and wrong, left and right, yes and no, black and white, right? So it becomes this quick need to judge something as good or bad. And as the signs continue, so Aries is the first, and it's a fire sign. If you have a lot of fire, I have a lot of fire. You probably want to take action. You're probably a really good action taker. You probably like to exercise or feel really calm when you exercise because you're getting out some of that energy. I tell everybody with a couple fire signs that you have to exercise. It's not a question. You need to exercise to let go of and to use some of that fire energy that you have. Otherwise you'll have anxiety and you'll have control issues because you're trying to stuff everything in. Aries can also be pioneers because you're the first. You're leaders by default because you're the first. You could come up with a new way of looking at something. You could also have a lot of impatience for things because, again, going back to the simplicity of being an infant, if you judge things as yes or no, right or wrong, left or right, and then there's a third category, your brain might be like, I don't compute that. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So it could be frustrating if your two-part way of wanting to compartmentalize things all of a sudden gets a wrench in it with somebody saying, well, there's a third. Like, no, there's not a third. It's either this or it's this. Like, I feel more comfortable. My Venus is in Aries, and your Venus is how you deal with relationships. And years ago, when I was acknowledging and noticing my behavior, I was asking myself, because most of my planets are at the end of the line. So they're very highly leveled and developed. So let's go back to the line for a second. Aries is the first. Taurus is the second. That's an earth sign. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what happens is the snowball gets bigger as you go down the line. And what that means is that everybody after you has your stuff plus somebody else, plus their stuff. So Pisces, me at the end, has everybody's good stuff and everybody's bad stuff. So there's a whole, it becomes more complex and layered. So but the Venus and Aries, I was so I'm like thinking to myself, I had a boyfriend who he wouldn't commit to, we'd broken up, and then he wouldn't kind of get back together. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, we're either together or we're not, because there's different rules. If we're together, I don't date anybody else. If we're not, I can date other people, or I'm not supposed to, whatever. So I just need him to tell me. I was ridiculous. I was very impatient about, just tell me, are we together or are we not? And I noticed this behavior and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why can't you just be? Why do you have to label it? And then I looked at my chart. I was like, Venus and Aries. Oh, okay. That's why. Because I have no patience, and I need to, in order for me to feel safe, I need to be able to say that it's this or it's this. I need to be able to I need to make sense of it. I need to compartmentalize it. So, So I think that astrology shows us what we're made up of energetically. So you'd be a lot of fire. I'm a lot of fire. I've got 3 Sag planets and an Aries. And that's just within. So I have a lot of fire, and you can see it. Obviously, it's exuding out of me right now. But someone who doesn't think like you or see the world like you or interpret like you is going to act very differently. And there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that they're different. So it levels the playing field of someone is right or wrong or good or bad. It just says, oh, this is what is important to them. For you, it's action potentially, or getting things done, or being productive, and for a Taurus or an earth sign, it could be just stability. They need to have financial stability or whatever. So each sign again, it's a complex system, but psychologically, it is so helpful. It helps validate people's experiences. It helps them to understand why they feel how they feel, why they look at the world the way they do. And it definitely helps in relationships to understand where people miscommunicate, because you may say one thing to me and I hear it differently than you've said it. And you don't know that. You just assume you say a word, I somehow am going to interpret it exactly the way that you did. And that's not true. So it gives us information. And I use it in all the work that I do because I think it's that important.
Oh, I smile. I have 3 people that are very important in my life that are all Gemini. And in fact, it's interesting. My one son's Gemini, his wife's Gemini. I've got another sign that's Gemini, and it's like, holy cow. So, and I think his wife is like, how do Aries get along with Geminis?
Well, again, there's a more complex. I need to know your moon, your ascendant, your Mercury. That's how you deal with communication. A couple other planets before I would answer that question, but generally, so Gemini is the third. So Aries is the first, Taurus is the second, and Gemini is the third because Gemini doesn't know whether to be Aries or Taurus. Right? That's why they're
That's
the
right.
twins.
They're kind
Yeah.
of like that.
Right. And they're the first of the air signs. So air signs are about thinking and thought and ideas. Geminis also don't tend Geminis get really excited about the ideas, but then don't necessarily complete the project. Or they're very shiny object syndrome. They can seem ADD or sort of get lost easily sometimes because they get excited about something. A lot of Geminis just want to have a good time. They like to play. They're playful and fun. Sometimes they're the jokester of the family or the practical jokester. Not always, but Geminis also like beauty. So women, Geminis definitely love to, have all the sparkles and the things and have things look a certain way. I don't know that all the men do too. Sometimes it depends on how, other factors that are in there. But Geminis they love concepts. They love ideas. They love, a lot of times Geminis are good podcast listeners because they love hearing stories and ideas, but sometimes they're not super connected to their, feeling of it. They're in their head a lot again. So there's a possible anxiety about overthinking, headaches, migraines. Geminis dominate that because they're the first air sign. So,
Well, and so you talk about astrology and how it can affect our lives. I look at very much behavioral management. I look at behavioral analysis tools and it's kind of a little bit about what you're talking about, the four characters. I happen to use the DISC, a very advanced DISC. So you get into that left brain extrovert, right brain extrovert, right brain introvert, and so on and so forth. But what I find is that as I've done that for people, and it really helps them as we go into the depth and analyze what's their motivators, what's their values, all those type of things. I find that in that particular case, I let them know that this does not identify absolutely who you are, but rather this gives you a sense and you can change. You can change. Now, do you find that's the same case when you're working with people and their astrology, that helping them to understand that although you fit into this, I fit into that Aries situation. The question is, you have the light and you have the shadow. You've got that shadow part that is not the one that you want. Are you able to change? Have you found that people can make those changes and not be labeled or put into a particular characterization, that they don't have to necessarily stay there?
Yeah, I've had absolutely, but I don't do it from the place of just astrology is the tool, but the first tool I use is I work with their core wounds. I think core wounds are the deepest, most straight to the with a lack of story. Like you get everyone's path and the reason they've done everything, because really the core wounds are the bottom, that's the belief system. If I understand what my core wounds are, I understand how I operate in the world and then we put on all the different other tools to figure out how the expression of that. But at the bottom down here, we have to understand what is it that I believe about myself and in the world and in life and about life, so that I understand why I'm making the choices that I'm making. Because these tools, while will be helpful to manage sort of circumstances on the top level, really to me only come into play when we start with the very basis understanding of that we come into this world with in the first 7 years, having our brains shaped and recorded by things that are happening to us that we have no control over, that we don't have options or consciousness to perceive differently. They become core wounds. And most of us don't know what they are, and they run our lives, and we seek therapy and we seek answers outside of that. And then we get temporary results because we're up here. We're in a story, we're in a circumstance, and we're not looking at how did it get created in the first place. And how it got created was because something happened with your caregivers or your parents that became a belief for you, whether it's that you're not important, you're ignored, you're devalued, you're smothered, whatever those wounds may be, but they shaped everything after that. So after 7, your whole subconscious got formed. So other than other traumas or triggers, like major traumas that happen in your life, which they will happen, we're all operating out of trying to get our needs met. And those needs are these wounds and trying to figure out how to get those met. So I only use astrology as a way to make sense of why we've reacted the way we've reacted or why we've interpreted the way we've interpreted. It's not a good, bad, or whatever. It just is. To me, it's factual, but not in a judgmental way, not in a conditional way, just these are the attributes that you have, and here are some of the things that could happen because of that. If you're too dominated in an Aries in a lot of fire, then there's a possibility you don't sleep well. There's a possibility that you overextend yourself, that you energetically, and you just sort of burn out. I'm not saying you, I'm just saying anybody.
No,
or
I
that
understand.
or that you have anxiety. And so then rather than someone who has anxiety, take a pill, how about learn how to manage all that fire energy that you have and do the things appropriate to your makeup to use it or to process whatever's coming up for you. Same thing with all the air signs.
So if I'm understanding, you're saying really the foundation of the whole thing is those core wounds, what we've experienced up until the age of 7. And then, astrology, behavioral analysis, all of these other things are merely a means of understanding how you will respond and express yourself according to that. So here's the question that I have. You've got your core wounds. How many times have you found as you're working with someone and you go back to those core wounds, do you find that it goes back a little bit further than what they can remember? So there's a DNA memory that might have to do with generations way back.
Sure, absolutely.
That you have no clue what's going on, and all of a sudden, wow, this is what is causing me to behave this way, and therefore I can change now that I understand that.
Yeah, I've worked with inherited emotional DNA clearing and with going back sort of generationally to generational things that get passed down. I think that is an important thing to look at some point. But what I also want to do is empower people in their story to make choices now. Because what happens is most people can't identify the feeling they're having or the reason why they're having it. So the need is not being met. They don't know what their core wounds are. And they just go to a therapist and repeat a story that's been happening for 20 years. Or they get divorced and marry the same person in a different suit. And then they say, oh, that must be that person. They did the same thing that other person did. So it must be them. Like we reflect or we deflect taking responsibility for the only things we can control, which is when we hear something, see something, or observe something, or remember something, it's our interpretation and then our emotions that get triggered because of that. And that's all in a circuitry we have 100% complete influence over. Even if someone else is triggering you, of course because they're the mirror, they're showing you your wound. But so the inherited emotional DNA absolutely has a place. And I like to make sure that people take responsibility first, because I find that sometimes when people want to go to all the healers that do all the clearings of all the things that they just fell into line in this lifetime with, that they feel there's a little victim mentality in that. Like, okay, you're going to clear that from me, or you're going to, and then they don't reevaluate. In fact, I had a client at my very first event, 2018, work with one of my friends who's a very great healer. And she did like 10 sessions with her. And then she came back to me, and in a session, she felt lighter, but she was interpreting the situation the exact same way she was interpreting before, which led me to believe, because when I first heard about and learned about subconscious work versus conscious work, I'm like, oh, it's all about the subconscious. Oh, it's all about the subconscious. And I went down this path of doing all the subconscious work and hypnosis and all the things. And then in situations like that, I went, no, we have to change the computer, because you still have a 12% conscious brain, and how you interpret something is everything. How you interpret something is the story you're telling, which activates a feeling and or triggers or doesn't trigger a wound. So if we don't change that part of the computer and change that program about the way you see the world, then you can clear for days all the underneath stuff, but you're still going to re-injure, reactivate, re-trigger yourself over and over again. So while I know and understand and believe and support all of the subconscious work, you still can change some of your some of that subconscious with your conscious.
And how do you do that? How do you do that?
Well, repetition, mindfulness, identification of it, and then changing. So in this, I created a program called, many programs, but called Rewiring Your Core Wound Patterns. Because, and I again, bringing in this seemingly disjointed life that I've had, which isn't at all, it all has evolved. I'm taking the personal training position of everyone who's ever had a trainer, or if you haven't, you've seen people who've had trainers, you do understand the concept that even in your most motivated day, you will never work as hard as you do with someone standing over you, watching you, and expecting you to push yourself to the limit. You will always work harder when you have a coach or a trainer who's helping you. So even if you understand the concepts of what I'm talking about, rewiring your core wound patterns creates neuroplasticity. It asks you to do things that stretch yourself into a new experience, which I promise you every time is going to be slightly uncomfortable or really uncomfortable. And most people don't do that willingly. So in order for us, I just got done listening to a Marco Polo from one of my clients who's been in therapy forever. And she said, what's been so awesome about this program so far is the doing, is the things that we have to do that actually change us instead of just understanding it and talking about it. And that's where I think, I have, if you have a therapist, anyone who's listening that you love, you're a different person because of it, this is not for you, what I'm about to say. Congratulations, you found one of the good ones. Otherwise, a lot of traditional talk therapy just keeps you in the story. It keeps you in the framework of this circumstance of you're the victim. Everybody else has somehow hurt your feelings or devalued you in some way. And this is about you just getting validated every time and telling the same story. But we never use the law of attraction. We never use quantum physics or sacred contracts or multiple lifetimes and soul levels to take responsibility for how I'm attracting this stuff and what's my part in this and what do I have to change because I'm the only person I can do anything about.
Well, and let's talk about that quantum physics, because literally we attract based on all of that stuff that's going on in our lives, and particularly if we allow the subconscious to affect us and we're not mindful enough to do what you're talking about. When we talk about quantum physics, we're talking about the energy, we're talking about the frequencies, we're talking about all those things. And I think it's difficult sometimes for people to understand that what they are experiencing is they're like a magnet. What they are experiencing is they are bringing to themselves the very thing that sometimes they're trying to avoid.
That is where, I teach law of attraction. Getting ready to do another 14-day manifestation challenge here soon. There'll be another one. So if anyone's interested in the future, jjflizanes.com/14-day, 14-day. I don't know when I'll run the next one, but I run them a couple times a year. They're free. When it comes to people misunderstanding law of attraction, they think, well, I put up a vision board. I say affirmations. I write in a gratitude journal, which I don't like the word gratitude, by the way. It's like a pet peeve for me.
Really? We'll talk about that in a minute, but keep going.
But they think, well, okay, I'm feeling good. I'm focused on what I want. Why do I keep getting what I don't want? Or why do I get what I want and then it goes away? It's like, because again, 12% of your brain is conscious, 88% is subconscious. And so the dominant energy producer, the dominant vibrational maker is your subconscious. So if you can using your conscious mind to bring something to you and you're sabotaging yourself, then it means there's a belief, there's an energy, there's a frequency that you're emitting that doesn't agree with, believe, or will allow in that thing that you want. So this is where you kind of have to understand and go a little deeper. And it's not that hard. Just notice what you're bringing in. You can just take it from the top level of what do I keep attracting? Because whatever you keep attracting is going to give you a message about what you believe.
How do you change that energy?
You change what you believe. You have to work on yourself. You have to change your belief.
Do you know how tough it is to change a belief?
I think it's very easy. I have done it many times. I've changed people's beliefs all the time. That's what I do for a living is I change people's beliefs. You have to decide that your belief was created by your circumstances. That's it. It's not set in stone. A belief is just a thought you keep thinking. Think a different thought. Choose a different way of looking at something. You can change your beliefs.
Okay, so you're really talking about reframing. In other words, looking at a situation, and I've done this with clients where you take them back to whatever experience they had to cause that subconscious belief. And as they start to look at that and start to reframe what the actual reality of it was, that changes their belief. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes. And I do it all the time. Here's where I don't love the word reframe because it sounds like, let me tell it differently so I feel better about it, but I'm still stuck on that it happened this way first or whatever. That's the energy that I'm getting when I hear that right now about reframe.
Okay.
It's about, and again, but it's a valid word. And I use it all the time, but how I think it's different is that most of the stories we tell ourselves are not true. They're our version of
That's
how
right.
we interpreted something. They are not truth. And they are most of the time absolutely incorrect about everybody else involved. So when you understand what someone else's point of view is, hence astrology, hence all the other tools that I use. I had a guy in my very first 3-month version of what was going to be the Rewire beta. It was too soon to understand what I was about to create. But anyway, he came to this group and it was very effective for most of them, but I felt like it was too much data dumping. But he had his success, what he showed me, what I could help create for him that was so powerful that I, again, continue to do this work. And he was seeing a therapist, but he had started my 3-month program and we got into the core wound piece quickly. And then he came on the Marco Polo and he shared that he was at his therapist to deal with his anger about his dad. And I'm like, what? Hold on. Anger about your dad? And of course, he had his story. I went back and asked a few questions based on some of the frameworks that I talk about in my stuff. So let's see, love language be one of them, core wounds would be another one. Anyway, all the things. And I basically said, I asked him, well, what was your dad's love language? And what, we didn't reframe it. We took it from that perspective. We looked at how did his dad feel? And all of a sudden he went from 40 years of feeling rejected and angry and painful to crying and feeling for the first time, because that guy was really angry. He was an addict. He was violent in ways at times because he was so mad because he felt so rejected. And then when we told the story from his dad's perspective and his dad's point of view, it changed everything instantly. And since then, he's been like, I feel my father's love all the time. Now he looks back at his past. Instead of feeling pain, he feels love. He sees the love that he never allowed himself to feel before in an instant. Is that a reframe? No, it's looking at it differently. It's interpreting it from another point of view, right?
I suppose. So you've written this book, Invisible Fitness Formula, and in there you talk about mind, body, soul. Can you share with the audience a little bit about that book and what your approach is on that and why you're using those 3 words?
Right, because our body, while we are living in it, our soul lives in this body. It is an expression of us. It's our body. A lot of times people want to separate, especially in the physical world. They want to, especially with body shame and weight loss and judging themselves. And if I'm valuable based on what I look like or what my body is, if I'm fat or if I'm whatever. And so it was my ode to my personal training career when I was about ready to sort of retire. It was saying, I've been doing this for over 25 years. I've worked with a lot of people. I've learned a lot of things. I see what I think works. And here are the 5 steps to release weight and end body shame in the order in which they need to be done to get the best results. And by the way, the first 3 things are physical. So that way the physical can help reduce and show you, because people would think, I had a client once years ago, I worked in a medical center. And so there was the functional medicine doctor, the nutritionist, and then me as the trainer. And he had come in to see the 2 of them, then he came to see me. That's the order that it went. And I said, okay, well, he was in 5 different Overeater Anonymouses, blah, 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 the stuff about his diet. And I said, have you taken a food sensitivity test? And he was like, no. And I said, well, march yourself back to Jeannie and go take the food sensitivity test, because it sounds like you have food sensitivity that's making you think you're an emotional eater. Not that he probably was an emotional eater also, but he just was convinced it was all emotional. And so he went back and he found out that he was sensitive and allergic to dairy. Of course, he was having yogurt and all the things, and corn. He was having popcorn. And then once he removed those from his diet, he lost 16 pounds in like 2 weeks, and he had no food cravings anymore. I'm like, okay, so when we remove some of the inflammation and food cravings, now we can see you're not just an emotional eater. You had an inflammatory response in the body. So to me, we get rid of some of the underlying physical things that persuade us. And now we can look at the emotions. Now we can look at what's really driving the train and what is it that you really want and why are you doing this? And what's the long-term goal? And do you love yourself enough to continue a high level of self-care? Because most people don't. They do it temporarily to lose a few pounds or to get someone's approval or to fit into a dress, and then they stop because the relationship with themselves is what needs to be worked on. And so I wrote that book. I mean, I've been in the midst of writing my 4th book because I wanted to just solidify all the years, all the time and effort I did with that. And it's still valid today. I re-released a 2nd edition earlier this year in January because I did an audiobook finally. As a podcaster, I thought, I need an audiobook. What am I doing not having an audiobook? So I finished the book. It's done. The audiobook is done. It's very valid. Most of it is still accurate today. And I have up-to-date stuff on the show. But I think anyone who's coming at the physical body from that it's somehow not attached to your mind, your psychology, as well as to like what your sole purpose is on this planet. Like if it's not a deeper connection, then you're just going to struggle with diet after diet or program after program or not have a good relationship with your body.
Well, I think you've hit it on the key. And as we're getting closer to the end, I just want to make this one comment because I appreciate what you've been saying is so important to find the root cause. It's so, you can go on and on and on and on, but unless you get to the root cause of what's going on, and as you said, that is the help of a coach. I had never heard of the food sensitivity type of test, but that's a great thing for those that are experiencing, obesity, all of those types of things. So as we close, what would be that final message that you would like to share with the audience as they end up finishing?
That there is an answer for your problem. So regardless of if you're struggling with money and business or with your health or in relationships or with your level of joy and happiness, there are answers. There are ways for you to get what you want. You're just going to have to learn something new and probably dive into and understand something a little bit differently and possibly change a belief.
Oh, wonderful. And so what's the name of your podcast?
Well, I have a network, so there's 16 shows, but I would say the one I would direct everybody to is called Spirit, Purpose, and Energy.
Okay. And do you do podcasts every week or is it periodically?
I've been after 10 years. Oh, there's more shows than anyone. Someone could decide after today that they're going to do nothing but follow me, and you couldn't even catch up in a couple of years from now. So don't worry. So it's lots of content. It's now after hitting a certain mark, I thought, I'm going to just go once a week, and then I thought, I'm just going to go 2 to 3 times a month. So it's about 2 to 3 times a month, and sometimes it's every week. It just depends on what's going on.
Okay. And what's the name of the podcast and how do they find it?
Everything is at jjflizanes.com, jjflizanes.com. Everything is there. Everything.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, JJ, thanks so much for being on the show. Interesting conversation.
Thanks, Dr. Doug. Yeah, I love it. I'd love to know more about your chart too.
Oh, enjoy it. And folks, thanks for listening. I hope you'll take this to heart. And if you find that there's a need, contact JJ. And it sounds like she could help you a lot if that's your specific need. So anyway, this is Dr. Doug saying have a wonderful week and namaste.